Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport roundup podcast. Quite an exciting week as Formula One is back. Circuit of the Americas plus W Series, we crowned the champion there with BTCC as well. Another champion is crowned. NASCAR is about to come to a head. Stuff on two wheels as well. Plenty of action to get into, but I think we need to kick off. Tiff, Needell, Formula One, Texas.
And a brilliant race. It's so funny because I tweeted that was a brilliant motor race. Sunday evening was brilliant. I liked having a Sunday evening race to watch live. And Damon Hill was so shocked I've been so positive. He tweeted, he said, "Have you been drinking, Tiff?" Because I think Damon, because he works for Sky, I think he despairs of that grumpy old Tiff's always moaning about Formula One. But when you have a fantastic race, and the point is, a race doesn't have to be a massive overtaking. I think people think, like BTCC, overtaking. No, if it's tension, if it's the build-up, and those two of them bashing away around the most. I was exhausted watching them through that turns 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. With the cars bouncing over the curbs, and Lewis tracking him down. That's what Grand Prix racing. In my day, the 60s, my rose-tinted glasses of the 60s and 70s and 80s, there wasn't that much overtaking. It was this hunting someone down. And it's a shame it wasn't 5 more laps, or Lewis didn't at least, get onto his gearbox. I think with the DRS, you get obsessed with watching that gap, don't you? 1.2, you're waiting it to be under 1 second so he gets the DRS. But it was just a cracking Grand Prix, because we had these two amazing talents going head-to-head for the title. And, I'm not I'm not obsessed with Lewis Hamilton. I support him because I'm British, but, Max, I'm a fan of as well. But also midfield, there was lots of overtaking going on. There's Ricciardo versus Sainz, and Alonso versus the rest of the world, the whole of the Alfa Romeo team. And there was just a lot going on. Great track, spectacular to watch, even though it's got a bit too many painted red, white stripes areas. You get a bit lost going through turns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where the actual track is. No, it's just a great, very entertaining motor race.
Well, the Americans do know how to put on a bit of razzmatazz, don't they? And it was entertaining. But, track limits came into it a little bit, certainly with the qualifying and arguably.
Yeah, correctly, though, exactly as you tweeted. I retweeted your tweet of you and your Caterham questioning, is that track limits? And it was exactly that. Wherever the line is, an apex or an exit, you've got to have 2 wheels on the track bit. It's such a simple rule if they stuck to it. Then, of course, later in the evening, it showed that during qualifying, Max was 4 wheels inside of the apex. So I said, Lewis should be on pole then. Then I got criticised for being a Lewis fan. And then, of course, the pictures came that Lewis was doing the same thing. And it turns out on that corner, they were all doing the same thing. So, but, it was really good stuff. And, there was right there in the field, Yuki Tsunoda having a good race. That was nice to him, holding off Bottas. Valtteri proving why he hasn't been signed for Mercedes for another year, because when he's down the field, he just can't get anywhere. He's not a fighter. He wasn't good at holding people off, when he was trying to defend from Red Bulls when he was in a Mercedes. And now when he's back on the grid, he can't get through anywhere.
Do you remember Jenson Button? He used to be so good at overtaking. He would catch somebody up, and we know what it's like. Unless you overtake straight away, it does become quite difficult, doesn't it? If you're stuck behind somebody. But Jenson was a master at it. But you're right, Valtteri just never seems to be able to get through that pack. And as you quite rightly say, you can see why George Russell's been signed by Mercedes next year. Yeah. Second driver in Red Bull with Perez. He seems to be doing a lot better now. He's a lot more.
Yeah, he was still a way
still
off
not setting the world on fire.
No,
still miles off the pace. But
when you think Alexander Albon, nearly won 2 Grand Prix. Albon, he was punted by Lewis in Brazil. He could have won that one. He was punted by Lewis in Austria when he could have won that one. So I still think Albon actually did a better job than Perez is doing now. But of course, can't keep on sacking drivers. But Alonso, yet again, I think, was it last week on the podcast? I said, Fernando seems to sometimes think that he's the most important thing in Formula One. He deliberately ran mine in Sochi to prove the point. At turn 1, he deliberately shot off into that runoff, went through the little chicane and came back on track because someone else had done that to him. And then in this race, he overtakes Kimi, went around the outside of him, and he just drove him off the road. Then he's on the radio, he overtook me off, get him sacked. Then he deliberately dive-bombed Giovinazzi on purpose, shot, 50 metres off track, and then came on and said, yeah, I've done that, And there are times, you're a side act at the moment, Fernando. Just wait till you get a good car. You just keep quiet for a while, and you're not the most important news anymore for the moment. You're still a brilliant driver, but
he's incredible driver, and he's a world champion. But enough's enough. It's not the Alonso show. I think you're right. But it is a bit of a two-horse race in terms of the championship. It looks like
fully,
the smart money is now back on Max, but it's still all to play for.
Fantastic, yeah. It's really looking like more tense days, and it was good. The first corner, the only thing I don't know why strategy. I thought Lewis might try to undercut Max on that second set of tyres. He closed in and he closed it down to about 2 seconds. And I thought, they'll do the undercut now, pit before Max. But in fact, it was Max that did it earlier for that last set of whites. Then Max had to make them last, 3 laps longer or something, which doesn't seem much to you or me. So I was a bit disappointed they didn't get ahead. But I think they just knew that if they got ahead of Max, on Max and the fresher tyres, Max would have got them. But lots of tension, spectacular track. Good stuff.
The strategist didn't quite get it right. There wasn't a particularly fast pit stop. Nothing sub 2 seconds, 2.24 seconds for Ferrari. Other than that, it's all pretty mundane, really. But good to see. And 2 incredible, epic, unbelievably talented drivers going to take it to the wire, no doubt. With
a lot to look forward to as we head into Christmas.
There certainly is. Should we stick with...
W Series came to an end,
yeah.
you were saying?
Well, stick with Circuit of the Americas with W Series, and I guess it's a bit of bittersweet here because, of course, Jamie Chadwick went on to win the W Series and is crowned the champion for the second time. Well, there's only been going for 2 seasons. And I guess the bittersweet is for me, and I think perhaps you might share the same, is she is so talented. Clearly, she's an exceptionally good driver, but in this equality world that we live in, where everybody has to be equal.
She's not quite good enough. Whenever she goes out against the boys, all we've really learned.
But she's $1 million better off.
That's all we've learned. The only definite fact about the W Series is that Jamie Chadwick is $1 million better off. And, it is a problem. She's not quite quick enough when she goes out in Formula 3 and stuff against the whole world. So I don't really know where it's going. I think the thing with WC is I don't think any of the girls in the series at the moment are going to be a Grand Prix driver unless someone buys a ride like with the Russian boy.
Mazepan, yeah.
So Mazepan. Because they've been out, they're not quite quick enough. And the race was a bit straight out of the front. Abby Pulling, the new girl, she was most impressive because she was right at the front. She was the one sort of chasing Jamie, and yet she's sort of done, how many was I looked at? She's done 42 British Formula 4 races and hasn't won one yet. So she's a very good female driver. But I think the only way WCS is really going to work is if the publicity it's got gets more young girls at 8, 9 and 10 going karting. That's what I hope WCS will achieve.
I'm sure
so
it will.
Eventually we'll find Maxine Verstappen or Louise Hamilton and we'll find that brilliantly talented girl, because you shouldn't really be allowed to get into Formula 1 unless you're brilliant, which is what annoys me when Mazepan and Latifi to a certain extent are, buying their rides. And then I think if Formula 1 looked at, they need to have a female in the. I mean, brilliant if there was a female on the grid. If they could get back to running maybe, second-hand cars and 8 more cars on the grid, sort of a B class. Because so many of the privateers, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, we had qualifying to get in when I was in Formula 1. We were 30 cars trying to get them on the 24 places. And it gave a lot more people a chance to be on a Grand Prix grid. So I think they should look and think seriously about not insisting on this 2 cars only in your constructors team and getting a B-class car out there and then getting 8 more drivers, having at least a season attacking in Formula 1.
There is no question having a female or multiple females on the grid of Formula 1 would be an exceptionally good thing.
Yeah, there's too few slots,
There are too few, but they're just. If we want to talk about equality, the ladies aren't there at the moment, but like you said, it's all about bringing through the next generation, hopefully, of ladies to get them excited. But reduce the prize money. I know Jamie Chadwick won't thank me for saying this, but $500,000 for winning a series.
Well, there's so many young drivers.
Races.
I know. the boys. I mean, Alex Walker, this kid that I've talked about before in Formula 4, he was up racing. I met him up at Snester when you raced the Caterhams. You know, he's won these Formula 4 championship, incredibly competitive. You know, overtaking, and you know, a lot of the girls. When you read the W Series columns, they always, every time they say, oh, when they were growing up, the girls couldn't get sponsorship, whereas the boys did. I've never heard of a bias towards males to be sponsored in motorsport ever. I mean, when you're coming up the ladder, the only way to come up is to get your own money, you know. And so I think Marcia, that Spanish girl, she was a Red Bull protege, but she didn't do well enough when she did Spanish Formula 4. And so they dropped her. You know, she had the Red Bull money. I think one of the other girls was a Renault sponsored, again, didn't get. So the money is there for the talent. And it frustrates me maybe that there's so many young male drivers who aren't getting any money either. I mean, it's a fantastic series, W Series, no doubt about it. But the cost of it, I don't know where the investors are going to ever get their money back. But it's a very, very kind thing they've done to help, you know, encourage more young girls to go karting, and then maybe we'll get that supreme talent that's out there somewhere.
It is, and that's absolutely not to detract from what Jamie Chadwick's done, which is phenomenal.
Not at all.
And the likes of Abby Powell and Vicky Peary, well, Abby Powell, who pushed it all the way. Alice Powell, who...
They've got another year next year, the top 8, and guaranteed another season, another fabulous year of global travel, racing at an attractive single-seater, completely paid for. Amazing. It's the most... this has never happened, you know, to any male series ever.
Well, not only is it all paid for and you don't have to worry about sponsorship or travel or anything, you've got the chance of winning $500,000 as well. So anyway, frustration for the...
We're not sure where it's going. That's the point.
But if it brings through, congratulations to Jamie and everybody else who participated. And if it brings through the next generation of female racing drivers, absolutely fantastic, worth every penny. Where are we going next, Tiff? I guess we've got to congratulate a northern gent with Ash Sutton, BTCC, British Touring Cars. Well, I mean, it was kind of Ash. It was there to lose for him more than to win, but he's a phenomenal driver. You rate him very, very highly. When we met him, I know you said that he should be off doing something else, but I guess
he should be off at Le Mans by now. He should go GT3 racing, Ash, or World LMP2, you know, Le Mans drive. It wasn't the most. Again, of course, it's always close racing and there's always scraps throughout the field. But Ash has sort of sat behind Turkington for 2 races, knowing that's all he had to do. So we didn't really have that. In the past 3 or 4 years, it's been tension right to the last lap of the last race at the reverse grid, you know. But this weekend wasn't quite like that because Ash, of course, won it, you know, with a race to spare. The only time with BTCC I was watching it, how close it all is. There's too many black cars. I think I said this at the beginning of the season. You watch these battles going on. There's like 4 black Hondas and 4 black BMWs. Ash's white car sort of stood out, and so did the Toyota. But yeah, it was epic stuff. So it was so close. How they don't have bigger crashes? They're rubbing, you know, front fender to rear fender. Going down the straights, and it was great. But actually, the most exciting race watching that after, I thought, was the Porsche Super Cups. I don't know if you watched those because the young King boy who dominated last year, he struggled. Dan Camish came back, the superstar from 2 or 3 years ago. It's been a bit of a tense Porsche thing. A couple of other youngsters really on the pace the same, and 4 of them are just the most outrageous racing. And King keeps on diving up. He's the most adventurous overtaker I think I've ever seen in motorsport recently. And, he was off 4 wheels on the grass, coming out of Hawthorne, one lap, top gear corner on the grass, ducking, diving. It was tremendous racing, the Porsches. It was the last year of this current model. They're going to change them all. But the Porsches, I think, even outdid the touring cars for spectacular racing head to head.
Yeah, good stuff. There was also a good Ash Sutton, congratulations. Also, a few of the Caterham series came because we concluded our championship a couple of weeks ago. But they're all up at Cadwell Park. Oh, what a crazy circuit! If you don't know Cadwell Park, I don't know Cadwell Park. But I looked at some on board and watched some of the live feeds. Wow, that is a car-eating circuit. There's not much runoff there, Tiff, is there? No,
you can't go off there.
But that was exciting as well. But let's go to some...
So great weekend at Brands.
It was. Were they at Brands? Were they at the BTCC and the Porsche Super Cup? Was that on the GP circuit, or was that on...
proper circuit. That's why it was so much better. I mean, just a brilliant racetrack. Fabulous stuff. Of course, the Ginetta Juniors end stage. I mean, as entertainment for spectator, I mean, those weekends are just awesome, you know.
And Brands is always a good place to watch. I mean, when it's the full GP, you've missed the loop.
Yeah.
Still, it's such a good place to watch because you can see so much from one vantage point. So, a good circuit. Good. And congratulations, Ash. You got a couple of fans here with Tiff and myself. And talking of fanboys, your boy in NASCAR. He did it right, didn't he?
Another last one. 2 rounds to go, and the excitement gets closer and closer. It wasn't an epic race, this one, a very fast race at Kansas. But in the end, it was a bit like the Formula One, to be honest, because Chase Elliott was trying to track down last. He was closing on him and closing on him. But at that Kansas, they run the wall, the quick line. It's just to run. You know, the left-hand drive, and they've got a whole car next to them, and they're running up against the wall, lap after lap after lap, with a bit of oversteer.
The precision.
He was closing in, and eventually a bit of oversteer, and he clattered the wall, and then he kept on going. It was getting loose, as they say, oversteer. Then he touched the wall again. They scraped the wall. And he had to drop away in the end because he needed the points to stay in the top 4 with 1 round to go. But the amazing thing there is that the Penske team, and Roger Penske now owns, NASCAR owns the world out there, doesn't he? But there's a chance that all 3 Fords won't make the 1 race shootout, the final race. When the cut comes after the final race this weekend, round the half-mile crazy bowl, what's it called? The track they're heading to. Got it on the end. Martinsville.
I was just about to say that.
But points-wise, I mean, only Larson's 1 race. He's won 2 of them. So any one of the other 7 wins at Martinsville, they're straight in. Otherwise, it's all done on points. And the leading Ford, Ryan Blaney, is 1 point outside of the cut line against, Kyle Busch is on the cut line in Toyota. So it's a tremendous, and all through the race, this cut line moves up and down when the competitors are so close. So it's going to be a really tense Martinsville this weekend. But Kyle Larson, I mean, if he doesn't win the title, it all ends up in just 1 race.
It's incredible.
Fantastic season, and yet the last round is just who leads out of the 4 that are officially left in the competition.
It's a bit like the English rugby Premiership, where you can be the most successful team over the whole season and be miles ahead of anyone else, but then it comes down to a crunch match with you and somebody else to who wins the Premiership. So, God, that'd be frustrating to lose it that way.
Ryan Blaney was well up in the points, the leading Penske guy. He was taken out by another competitor, completely innocent in a crash halfway through the race. So whereas he was well into the points, he's now the first one outside the points because another competitor wiped him out.
Who even watches NASCAR on this talk? Let us know below. Who even watches NASCAR? Does anyone watch it, or are we just kind of humouring Tiff with adding NASCAR? We got to.
I'm trying to. The whole
one of the
point
biggest
of this
motorsports in the world
is to open people's eyes. That's why we're having this podcast, hopefully to make people aware of what else is out there. People, I know people that have got the Sky Sports Grand Prix. They watch the Formula One, and they switch off when IndyCar's coming on Sunday evening, straight after a Sunday Grand Prix. And they're watching a processional Grand Prix race because they're always exciting, and then IndyCar's coming and they just turn it off.
I have to say, I agree with you about the Formula One being on at 8 o'clock in the evening on the Sunday evening in the UK. That was lovely. Sitting back, nice glass of red wine, the fire was on. Perfect, absolutely perfect. So let's go to 2 wheels, Tiff. Let's go to Moto GP. It was quite a full-on time there, but
brilliant weekend.
Who came out on top?
Well, it was 3 teams all having massive celebrations. It's Emilio. What was the name of the Grand Prix?
Romagna.
Yeah, because it replaces the Malaysian Grand Prix, I think, due to all the COVID. So it was a second Italian Grand Prix in effect down at Misano. And the 3 celebrations, because Marc Marquez continued his amazing comeback and won the race. So Honda and Marquez are all jumping up down the pit lane. Valentino Rossi had his last race in Italy. So the whole half of the spectators were wearing yellow, the yellow 48, and Rossi was doing the parade lap at the end. He finished 10th. He had a good race, which for him, he hasn't been up there, of course, this year. So they're all the Italians were having huge celebrations. And for very rarely, Valentino threw his helmet into the crowd, which must have caused a bun fight. I think one person caught it cleanly. So they were all celebrating. And then Fabio Quartararo, the French kid, finally, he was marching towards the title anyway. It was getting tight. He claimed the world championship at this meeting. There were still 2 rounds to go. So he was in tears, and the French tricolore, the French riders never won it before. So it's amazing for France. And the celebrations having Moto GP, because while Marquez was kissing all his crew in the pit lane, Valentino was waving at the massive yellow army out of the grandstands. And for Quartararo, they'd pre-planned this red carpet. So he got off his bike and he was given a gold-painted helmet in his colours. And he walked down this red carpet, and it was a little circle said, "Stop here." So when he stopped there in front of the main grandstands, they did a big film history of his whole life and his career, so he could stop and watch. And he was in tears all the time.
Wow.
Then the arrow said, "Move on." This was all brilliantly planned. He moved on. Then there was another little circle that said, "Dance here." So he did a bit of a jiggy dance, and it was just great. Unfortunately, the championship could have gone further because it was one of Valentino Rossi's proteges, Francesco Bagnaia on the Ducati, who was challenging. He's won the last previous 2 Grand Prix. I think he was beginning to close the gap on Quartararo, and he was leading the race with Ducati. But he fell at turn 15. Turn 15 was a notorious left-hander all weekend. Qualifying to be wet damp, so nobody really had fully dry conditions. Quartararo only qualified 15th. I mean, that's how competitive it is in bikes. And he obviously wasn't pushing, and he came up to finish 4th in the race to take the title. But Quartararo and Bagnaia, he could have won the title if he'd not dropped it. So it was all over. Moto 2, then we had Sam Lowe's win, great South British rider who won the first 2 rounds of the year and then just had a few more crashes and dropped down and had bad luck. So he came back to win from pole position. But again, he was being led by a championship contender. Was it Raul Fernandez, who'd won the last 3 races? And he was catching the championship leader, which is Remy Gardner, the Australian boy. And he dropped it. Same corner, the front folded under him. When you see it, because they turn in, they're still bleeding off the brakes on their little handlebars. And they just squeeze that front brake a little bit too much as they tilt it in. Poof, your front's gone and you're on your bum. It's not like you slide wide in a car. You're skating down the tarmac at 110 miles an hour. So that gave Sam Lowe's back the lead. So Sam won the race. Jake Dixon, another British rider in Moto 2, qualified 17th, got to 13th. But in Moto 3, poor old John McPhee, our Scottish star, had the flu and qualified 12th and crashed out in the race. So not much joy for the Brits apart from Sam Lowe's. Well, you've only got 3 Brits in all 3 series, so I suppose one of them winning is quite good. Moto 3, that's building huge drama because we had our runaway champion, little Pedro Acosta. It was like winning. This 16, we all thought he's going to walk the championship. But Dennis Foggia on a Honda, he's now won. He's had 3 wins in a second from the last 4 rounds, and he's just closing the gap. And Acosta's beginning to look a little bit rattled. He managed to finish 3rd. He should still get home and be the champion after the next 2 rounds. But pressure's building on the KTM boys from the Honda of Dennis Foggia. So lots in MotoGP is building up. So we've got Formula 1 building up to a great crescendo, and we've got Moto 3 building to a crescendo. Moto 2, maybe not such. Good weeks, good entertaining for the bikers as always.
Do you know what else was in Italy? Well, on an island, an Italian island in the Mediterranean, a lovely, beautiful island called Sardinia.
How can we forget that?
Do you know what it was? It was very quiet.
Electric beach buggy racing. I watched it. I have to. I mean, it's spectacular. They bounce in the air. They all break their suspension, going around with broken steering arms, rolling over into the undergrowth. And they were just on a tank range. I don't know quite where. I thought maybe, I was hoping this would happen actually, that they would get the drivers. The drivers, they were picking plastic out of the ocean somewhere and they're picking litter out of the glacier. I remember
that. That was like the first photo shoot opportunity.
I thought because they're on a military zone, they could have been defusing unexploded bombs. That, like Princess Diana did that. That would have been a very good thing they could have done to show.
She was doing mines in Africa. It's a little bit different, trying to save the people of wars. than
Or
DTCC.
Sardinia, but they've got to show there could be some unexploded shells on the tank
now.
range.
You've just been very silly now, but it was okay, wasn't it? It's not for me. I'll be honest with you, but it's okay. We need to change our titles from what are we, motoring journalists? We need to be influencers, because I saw another load of influencers over there with one of the car manufacturers who I won't name, but we definitely need to change out. We need to be influencers. We've
got to get more woke.
Snazzy clothes.
We're not getting the freebies, though. We're not getting the freebies unless we say everything's wonderful and brilliant. Brilliant. Everything has to be brilliant and beautiful nowadays. There can be no criticism of anything.
Don't worry about your views, your audience. And speaking of audience, actually, that's a very tenuous link, because Owen Pass, he's a lovely chap who you've actually taken around Thruxton a couple of times. He's wheelchair bound. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. I caught up with him at Castle Combe this week, and he said to send on his best regards, because he listens and watches our podcast every week. So,
okay,
Owen,
great.
Yeah, top man. But where were we? We're Sardinia with we're not influencing.
Yes.
We need to get influencing a bit more. But
anyway,
what's your takeaway with the with E-Series? Is it Extreme E, I beg your pardon? Is it something that's going to continue? Do you think it's got any longevity?
No idea. I don't know. Again, who's funding all these things? I think it's like Formula E. They sort of self-fund, don't they, to get it all going, and hopefully then big sponsors will come in.
But do you think the likes of Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton are going to stay there next year with their entries, and Nico Rosberg? Do you think they are? Or they must be. Makes their
CV look. I mean, Nico's fully into evolution, electric. I think he's invested in Formula E. I mean, and Nico invests money, so he's one of the investors. I think in Formula E and other these sort of wokey things, and so it's good for their CV. Like Lewis is doing great work and stuff, and they think this is what they want to do, and if that makes them feel better, that's great. It creates the sport. But I don't think Extreme E is changing the world in any way at all. Because I mean, a lot of people are joking about the cost of flying them around the world and everything else that goes on.
No, they don't fly them around the world. They sail them around the world. So it's
you've got Rallycross. Rallycross is a very entertaining motorsport. That's going electric next year. An electric Rallycross, which we've tried on Lovecars, that will work, because it's little tight racing, big spectators,
and very short.
But
it's a 5-minute race.
Beach buggies that keep on braking, because they take to this terrain that's so rough. I mean, they put them through hell, and they break, because they're such big things, heavy.
Okay, so what have we got next week? That's enough of beach buggies. They're not beach buggies. They're unbelievable bits of kit, these things. But it's just,
what are they then? How would you describe the vehicle?
Well, I would say it's an all-terrain electric vehicle. I would say it's an electric race car.
A beach buggy.
Okay, beach buggies.
This weekend, the much not watched and hardly thought about.
What should we be watching this weekend? Tell us what we should be watching.
There isn't much. The World Endurance Championship starts its last 2 rounds, both being held in Bahrain. So they're off to Bahrain for 2 weekends. Toyotas are obviously going to win it, because they've already won everything this year. So it's either the 2 Toyota crews will be crowned drivers' champions, and hopefully it'll be our boy Mike Conway, because Mike Conway, he was champion last. His team won the championship last year, but didn't win Le Mans. They're famous, the number 8 or number 7, whichever they are, never wins Le Mans. They won Le Mans, so let's hope he has a year when he wins both the crowns of Le Mans and the World Championship with his teammates Kamui Kobayashi and Jose Maria Lopez, the Argentinian. There's a very tight LMP2 battle, because obviously that goes around with them as well. The Brits in with a chance of winning that are Tom Blomqvist, Anthony Davidson, Philip Hansen and Alex Brundle. So we've got British interest in LMP2. The GTE class, because there's always these 3 classes. James Collado is the only Brit, and he's actually leading at the moment, it's Ferrari. So plenty of British interest to follow the World Endurance Championship around the tricky circuit of Bahrain. Bahrain. NASCAR, of course, on Sunday. Martinsville, this is half a mile. No car will finish the Martinsville race without a dented fender wing, whatever you want to call it. There is always, you're leaning on people, and the 7 have to be cut to 3 to join Larson for the final race. So maximum tension for the playoffs, around a half-mile Martinsville. And if you're in Britain and you want to go watch the motor of sport, then the British Rally Championship is up at Llandudno. It's the Conway Cambrian Rally. So if you fancy a rally, get your anoraks out. It's getting cold. But it is great to walk into a forest and to walk into. There's some great Welsh up in the north of Wales. I think I pretty raced around some of them when I did the Rally GB. So some spectacular rally spectating to be done up in Wales. I think it's on Saturday only.
There is something about that. I went yesterday to watch a friend do some motocross as a race, an hour endurance, hour race, and you traipse down into the woods, get your best position, and it's with rain and mud everywhere. But it's brilliant.
Get a thermos, coffee with a bit of brandy in it or something, and go and support the Prix. The rallying in this country is dying on its feet at the moment. Because we don't have a rally GB anymore. It's very expensive even to do these sort of. They're in the second group, the R5 cars, but they're really expensive cars. The forestry stages, it's costing more and more to hire them because you have to.
And the amount of volunteers as well is just
and they're needed. So
really nuts. The amount.
So let's give British rallying, if you can, if you're up there in the northwest, anywhere up the northwest of England, pop over to Llandudno and wave a flag and support the British Rally Championship.
And speaking of British, let's the best of British to my old mate Tiff, because it's a massive milestone this week for Tiff. He's going to be turning, believe it or not, I just said before we started this podcast, he looks 10 years younger than me. Believe it or not, he's a little bit older because he turns 70 this coming Friday. So Friday, the 29th of October.
I can't believe it.
Please join me in passing on the very best of wishes to Tiff. So you won't be racing this weekend. Hopefully you're going to put your feet up and have a few glasses of champagne.
I'll be at Watford on Saturday with a hangover, with a big hangover, watching the Saints away at Watford. So I hope that'll be a good celebration. Nice Friday night out in London, and then we're going to go straight to Watford with the boys and hopefully have a win. That'll be my best birthday present. Will be the Saints winning on the Saturday.
Well, I really sincerely hope that comes true, Tiff, and I look forward to speaking to you. Well, I'll speak to you very soon. But thanks as always for joining us. See you next week.
See you next week. Cheers.
See you next week when he's a little bit older. He'll be 70 when we join him next week. This is the last time you'll see Tiff Needell, 69 on this podcast. Happy birthday for Friday, Tiff. Cheers, guys. Cheers.